Hi everyone, thanks for joining our webinar on how to use Kittyhawk. Today we have Josh joining us from Kittyhawk along with DARTdrones Chief Pilot Colin Romberger. So I'm going to pass it right over to Josh and he can begin explaining Kittyhawk's platform.
Hi, Alicia and Colin. Thank you so much for having me. For those of you who don't know, my name is Joshua Ziering. I'm the founder of Kittyhawk.io. We're an enterprise drone operations management solution. We help groups of people manage fleets of drones so that they can move those insights securely and safely into their enterprise. Kittyhawk is a best-in-class solution for helping companies in the Fortune 500 manage groups of drones safely and compliantly. If you're looking for a way to manage your pilots' compliance and safety, this is the way to do it.
So excellent, Josh, and great. We're really glad. Alicia and I are both glad that you could join us today to go over everything with Kittyhawk. I'll tell you what. Let's just kick things off, and if you can show us, as a new user, how would we get into our accounts, get set up, and walk us through a typical one flight operation, so that we can see what that workflow looks like.
Sure, no problem. So if you're a Kittyhawk user, you work for the enterprise, you'll have a username and password. You can go ahead and go to the Kittyhawk login screen. We do not recommend that anybody save their password, so that's why you'll see that I'm typing mine in again. So you'll go ahead, log in. It's going to ask you, hey, what account do you want to manage? There's a number of different accounts available to you. If you're an enterprise user, you might have a personal account, you might not. So we'll go ahead here, and I'm going to go ahead and leverage the Joshua account. We'll go ahead and select that. And that brings us right to our dashboard. We're able to see all of the information that we want at a glance. Things like flight hours, number of flight logs, number of checklists, number of drones, number of maintenance events, as well as some really handy airspace information.
Perfect. And talk to me a little bit about flight planning, Josh. So let's say we're in here, we're ready to plan a flight. Maybe we're not on location. Maybe we're planning an operation that's going to take place another couple days or another couple weeks. Walk me through that process of setting up a flight using the desktop version at this point.
Sure. So Kittyhawk has mission planning features available to you right from the desktop application. Here we can see all of the missions available to us, as well as the missions that are active and future missions. Let's go ahead and add a brand new mission. From the top right, we'll hit the Add Mission button, and there we can search from the search box an address. Let's go to my childhood home. So we'll go to Maplewood, New Jersey, just outside of the Class Bravo airspace for Newark, New Jersey. You can see here, it'll zoom us into where we're going. It auto-populates both the latitude and longitude so that you don't have to enter that. Unfortunately, we're not going to be flying today, but let's say we're going to do something over Thanksgiving. We'll go ahead and select that Thanksgiving and 9 o'clock in the morning. Great. And you'll notice that the mission end time is always an hour later unless you change it. And we're going to call this Turkey Day is the name of our mission. We'll make a couple notes. Beware of wild turkeys in the area. Those things are actually surprisingly vicious. You'd be surprised. They roam in packs. We'll select the user. That's going to be me. And we'll go ahead and create the mission. From there, the Kittyhawk platform makes a mission status of requested, and it goes out and gets the current weather as well as a bunch of information about the airspace. So if we wanted to go here and drill down a little bit, we can hit the facilities map. And this is a visual representation of the facilities map that the FAA provides to USSs. That stands for UAS Service Suppliers. And what this does is if we needed a LANC authorization or we were going to be in controlled airspace, we could get a good look at what's happening there. We also have the classic sectional charts available to you at the tap of a button. So if you want to go check out the Bible, that's what we call the sectionals here at Kittyhawk, you can do that as well. And if you'd like to come back to a little bit more friendly, transparent overlay, we have that available to you as well. So there's a wealth of information, and now you have this mission available to you. You can start either running a risk assessment or attaching different assets to this. So for example, if we wanted to come down here and add a document to this, we could. So if we needed for example, a COA, standard operating procedure, or something along those lines, all of that's available. And then when we get on site, this mission will be available to us from the mobile application.
Perfect, excellent. And going along with planning, I see that you guys are set up to actually obtain LANC authorizations. Is that correct? I know that was a feature you guys rolled out not too long ago.
Yeah, actually, Kittyhawk is one of the 9 new companies that has been designated by the FAA to be a UAS service supplier. And that means that we act as an intermediary between the FAA and the end user in order to facilitate operations in controlled airspace.
Fantastic, fantastic, excellent. And could you, I know we're looking at a different day right now, but is there any way you could show us how we go about putting in that request for the Lance authorization? Is that something we can do through the desktop application?
Colin, I'd be thrilled to. In fact, we can do it right through the mobile application because
Beautiful.
what we find is that most folks, and it is coming to desktop, but we find that most folks are looking for a Lance authorization ad hoc rather than very far in advance. So the advantage here is that when you're using the mobile application, you can go ahead and plan your Lance authorization right away rather than having to do a bunch of desktop work.
Excellent, excellent. Well, I'll tell you what, before we switch over, because I know there's a lot of other stuff that we can take a look at here as far as the desktop version itself, but we'll keep that in the back pocket when we get over to the mobile app in a little bit. But why don't you show us, obviously we're doing a flight, but we need to be able to upload all of our information to Kittyhawk as far as the information about our different UAS platforms that we have, maybe flight logs of our pilots and things that have already taken place when we become new adopters. If we just started using Kittyhawk recently, can you run us through that process, how we could update those records here through the desktop?
Certainly. So the desktop really is designed for the manager and the kind of chief pilot, if you will, Colin, to
Excellent.
be able to manage all of the assets. So right here under assets, we can go and check out the aircraft. And then from the top right, we can go ahead and add an aircraft here. And we have a number of existing templates to save you from doing a lot of arduous data entry. But if you'd like to make your own, we have that option available for you as well. Let's go ahead and add a DJI Inspire 1. We've already gone ahead and created an identifier for you based upon the make and model of the aircraft. A lot of folks will actually go ahead and put in the name of the pilot. We find that many of our enterprise users like to associate the pilot with the aircraft. So for example, it would be Ziering DJI Inspire 1. And this is a way to help understand who's in charge of the aircraft, who owns it, and you'll have it readily available to you both from the app and the desktop. This is a commercially registered aircraft. We're going to use the illustrious FAA 12345 registration number. I sincerely feel bad for the person who might actually have that. It is a multi-rotor, and the propellers are already entered, the weight's already entered, and then lastly, the registration expiration. So we'll go ahead and say that it's going to expire in 2020 on October 10th. We'll go ahead and save this to the fleet. Great, now that's available to us. So when we go to log a flight, all of that's immediately available. So in our flight log here, we'll go to the top right, hit add a flight, and this is the manual adding of a flight. What you'll find is that if you're using the DJI platform, Kittyhawk natively integrates. You won't have to do a manual flight log. It'll actually all just happen for you automatically. In the event you're not using DJI hardware or you're not using the Kittyhawk app to fly, you'll be doing manual flight logs, and this is a good example of how to do that. So we'll select the pilot in command, that would be me, the flight time. All right, say 8 a.m. on Friday, November 9th. Let's say it's a 12-minute, 34-second flight. And we can either use our save locations or we can just enter in a latitude and longitude. I have a favorite location at my house here. So we'll go ahead and select that. You'll notice that it gets rid of the latitude and longitude because it's already saved it. It knows where we are. We'll select the drone here. So the Ziering DJI Inspire 1. We can add as many batteries to the flight as we'd like. So if you're using the Inspire 2 or perhaps the M210 series of aircraft, you can go ahead and account for both of those batteries. We'll go ahead and make a note here. It was windy, as it tends to be here in San Francisco, and we'll append the weather and airspace to this flight as well. When we're done, we'll go ahead and hit the log flight button. And immediately all of that information is now available to my teammates and in the cloud. You can see we've got a nice map here, and we're able to go ahead and understand all of the information associated with this flight.
Beautiful. And going down the list, so we've planned our flight, we've chosen our aircraft, and made sure that its details are updated. I see we can also input a specific checklist that might be specific to our own company or our own operations, correct?
Certainly. And also, I just want to point out one thing: the flight actually it appends data to it after the flight. So we take things like your latitude, and longitude, and derive the weather from it, and derive airspace from it. So it might take a second, but all of that information is being fetched as soon as you enter the data. So you'll see here, I refreshed, and all of that was immediately available to us.
That's awesome.
Cool. Yeah, let's talk about checklists. So we have a checklist here in our account. We have a high winds checklist. We have a aircraft specific checklist. We have a shutdown checklist. There's a number of different options here. Feel free to make your own checklist. So if we add a checklist from the top right, we'll hit the add checklist button. We can just go ahead and give it a title. So we're going to call it a Collins morning checklist.
There you go. Make sure coffee is #1 up there, please.
All right. So coffee, great. Set and brewed, right?
Excellent.
We'll do the aviation style nomenclature here. Then we're going to go ahead. Keys, placed in pocket, right? We can just add more of these items as we see fit. And then car, on and heating, right? And we'll just go from there. So we have the ability, if you like sharing with the public, and you're proud of your safety program, you have the ability to make a checklist public. We have hundreds of checklists available to you. If you'd like to peruse them and add them to your account, you can. But let's just say that Colin's morning checklist is something of a proprietary checklist. We're going to go ahead and not make that public. So we'll go ahead and hit save checklist. Great. And so now this checklist is available to everybody in the account. You're able to, if you'd like a paper copy, for whatever reason, you can print a paper copy of it. If you'd like to edit it, all of that's available to you as well. And then lastly, if you want to run the checklist on the web, let's say it's a before you leave the house checklist or a have I done my reporting correctly checklist, you can do that as well. So coffee, set and brewed, yep. All right, keys placed in pocket, yep. Great. And cars on and heating. Then we can make notes about any of the things. The coffee was a little burned, right? Not a great morning for Colin here. So we'll log your completion of this checklist. And now, if you wanted to see the completion of that, you can go ahead here into the activity option, look at checklist logs, and you'll see that yes, Josh Searing completed Colin's morning pre-flight checklist on November 8th at 7:19.
Excellent, excellent. As far as things that we can show, that we've completed over time, be it routine tasks that we have, as part of an actual flight operation, or maybe just taking care of the aircraft. I see under activity there, you also have your maintenance and what was the other that I saw there? Your risk assessments area. You want to talk to us a little bit about those too?
Certainly. So the maintenance is really designed for you to be able to keep track of important events in an aircraft's life. So from the top right, we'll go ahead and hit the add maintenance button. And for the keen observers, you'll notice that there's a design pattern here in Kittyhawk. We like the top right corner for adding things. So we'll say Zeering is going to be working on the DJI Inspire 1, and it's going to be today at 11:20. Great. So we'll just select 11:20 here. So we're going to go ahead here and say this is going to be an other status. And the reason for the maintenance is it's recommended. It's recommended by the manufacturer that you update the firmware. So we'll go ahead and say updated to the latest firmware. And I always like to make a note of what it is. So we'll say 6.7.8. Sounds exciting. We'll record the maintenance event. And now when we look at our assets, for example, if we look at the aircraft here and we go look at the Zeering Inspire 1, we have no problem hitting the maintenance button, and it's going to go ahead and show us all of the maintenance for that aircraft.
Beautiful, beautiful.
Now let's talk about risk assessments. So risk assessments is one of the things that we're particularly excited about. It's associated to a mission, and we developed this in conjunction with CNN to help them understand and quantify the types of operations they're doing and how they can better understand the risk associated with those operations. So let's go back to our missions tab, and we'll go ahead here and go to our Turkey Day mission. From the screen, we can run a risk assessment. And so this is actually going to intelligently fill out some of the information for us automatically because it knows, because we use Kittyhawk, a lot about us. So in this account, I have less than 20 hours of logged flight time, but make no mistake, I've wasted years of my life playing with drones. So just for now, we'll say 20 hours is good. I have flown in the last week, and it's already filling this in for me automatically. This is, Colin, would you be my visual observer?
Be happy to.
That's awesome. Keep an eye out for me.
You got it.
We'll go ahead and say it's a complex flight path and that we are adjacent to critical infrastructure. The takeoff and landing zone, because I have a VO, definitely defined. You're going to, sir, take a step back. Nothing to see here. Falls within our standard regulations, and the airspace is clear with no advisories. Again, standard operation, part 107 during daylight hours. And I'm going to say Colin is going to wear a cool vest. We can always leave a note here. So we'll go ahead and get the risk assessment score. So we'll log that, and we're able to see right here in the risk assessment tab that we have a 25% risk on the pilot, 30% on the flight. The conditions are very favorable, and the total score is 22%. So this is a good way for you to be able to say, hey, is this really a operation I want to undertake? If you can set a policy for your pilots saying, hey, if it's over 50, if it's over 60, if it's over 70, we're not flying that operation. This is a good way for you to be able to draw a line in the sand based upon a lot of different variables.
Yeah, and I like the way that you leave that open the way it is. Out of curiosity, do you guys have any recommended levels in case people are wondering, hey, we're kind of new at this thing. Where would you think that the general or the average operation would cross from that? Maybe we need to give it a second thought in terms of safety.
Far be it from me to suggest to anybody, this is the way forward. What I would do is, if as a program manager, I would go through the risk assessment a few times myself, and I would fill out operations that made me nervous, and I'd see how they score. Then I'd fill out operations I'd be very comfortable with, and I'd see how they'd score. And I'd look at kind of those numbers, and I'd say, all right, well, this one that made me really nervous was a 78. That's way too high. This one that I felt really comfortable with was a 22. How do I want to deal with this? And so I would run through the process yourself to figure out what are the things that are going to make you nervous and what is the skill level of your team and your operators.
Excellent. Yeah, and that sounds like a great approach. Absolutely. Cool. So Josh, why don't you wrap up some things here as far as the front end is concerned on the desktop, and we may jump back out here at the end to kind of take a look at all of our records and how those are organized for us at the end after we've actually conducted our flight. But I want to get us over to the mobile application too.
Sure. So I think just a couple of things to point out really quickly. When you upload things from the mobile app, particularly photos and documents, they're available to you wherever you are. So if you upload a document, you have that available to you on the mobile app. And if you upload a photo from your drone on the mobile app, it's available to you immediately on the web interface. Here you can see some of our Friday Fly Day events here. And here we are in San Francisco. All of this is immediately available once you upload it to the app, and you can download it in real time. So if you're sharing data with a team, all of this information is there for you in full resolution the second you upload it. Cool.
Fantastic.
And then lastly, if you're working in a very large team, and some of the teams on Kittyhawk number in the hundreds, 600, 700, 800 pilots, you might want to know where your team is operating. If you have a major event, a catastrophic event that you need to go handle, and you want to know where your team's operating, we actually have live traffic available for you. And so you can see here right now on the Kittyhawk platform, there are two aircraft flying. These are anonymous aircraft, so they're not on our team. These are people who have chosen to share their telemetry with the Kittyhawk platform in order to create a culture of safety amongst all of us. And so if we wanted to go here and say, all right, let's check out who's operating outside of Houston, we could go look at them, and this is them flying right now in real time as we're on the webinar here. So very cool, and you're able to turn this on and off. We are not invading your privacy, and if this was somebody on our team, I'd actually be able to see the term here, instead of anonymous, I'd be able to see, hey, this is Josh or this is Colin.
That's great. So it's a good way to keep, oversight, of your folks, make sure that they're out there when they say they're actually going to be out there, and keep things a little bit honest too, as well as making sure we're keeping an eye out for safety. So
Yeah, and if you want to make sure that somebody is in an area or you'd like them to go to a different area, you can get a good sense of what they're doing and when. And with our secure live video streaming product, you could actually go and view what they're viewing on their screen right now. So if I wanted to understand, hey, what's going on over there? How can I help? Or hey, let's do this inspection together while I'm in the office in San Francisco and you're on the ground in Iowa, no problem.
Excellent, excellent. And tell me about those live features a little bit there, Josh. And I know we'll talk about this leading over to the mobile app as well. But what's that like as far as the live stream and any delay factors, latency, things like that that are involved in that transmission?
So the first and most important thing that we are excited about with Kittyhawk live streaming is that it's a secure end-to-end solution. You have to look at it through Kittyhawk. You're not going to be sharing it with YouTube or Facebook or Twitch or Periscope. This is a solution built for the enterprise to preserve data integrity. And so from the Kittyhawk application, you'll be sharing your screen, and it's a two-way communication. So just like we're here on this webinar right now and we're having a conversation, you'll actually be in real-time voice contact with the person flying the drone. Think a very souped-up aircraft radio, if you will.
Fantastic.
And then anybody in the world with a internet connection can open the Kittyhawk app, see that you're flying, see that you're streaming video, and join that conversation as well. So this is really good. For example, some of our customers have very, very arcane machinery, right? There's 6 of these machines in the world. There's one expert who knows all about it, and that person happens to live in Basel. Well, putting them on a plane is not the most cost-effective solution, but letting them see in real time what's happening is a very excellent way to utilize the secure streaming function of Kittyhawk. And because there's such little latency on the order of less than a second, when I ask, can you pan left, can you pan right, that information is acted upon almost immediately, and I can see from there. So depending upon your connection and the availability of LTE, we're doing 720p at 30 frames per second. So excellent. You can either go up in quality and down in frame rate, or you can go up in frame rate and down in quality. We're working on better solutions, but for right now, with the amount of latency that we're able to diminish, we have the ability to do this, and it's working really well for a lot of our enterprise customers.
Oh, that sounds great. All right, anything else that you want to show us here before we jump over to the other platform?
I think the only last thing that I'd like to mention is that we have flight data export. You can get a CSV of all the information and flights in your account. And because of this, this is a good way for you to be able to back up your data. It's all available to you. And the one thing that we aren't able to show in a webinar, which I think is so important to the enterprise, is Kittyhawk has a very excellent API. If you'd like to put in information from SharePoint or pull information out into, for example, Power BI, we have the ability to do that. It requires a little bit of integration work, but being able to seed Kittyhawk data from your native kind of environment into Kittyhawk is of great value to our enterprise customers.
Yeah, absolutely. I know that's often a topic that comes up when we're talking with some of the larger clients we work with. How can we get all the different pieces of software to talk to each other and get everything to interact the way that they want it to? So having that capability definitely going to be a desired feature, I'm sure.
Yes, it's extremely popular. So let's jump to the mobile app. We're super proud of our mobile app. I think Great. It's worth showing here. So, all right, there's our mobile app. So let's start off with the LANC authorization. We've opened up the app, and this is going to give us everything we need at a glance to be Part 107 compliant. We have Sunset available to us, the KP index, cloud cover, even GPS availability here. We even do a density altitude calculation for you. So if, for example, it's summertime in Denver and you're doing a flight, you can get a good sense that your performance may be degraded. So from the Add button at the bottom center of the screen, we're going to hit the plus, and then we're going to request LANC authorization. You can see here it's auto-populated my information, like my name, my FAA number, my FAA Part 107 number, and my issue date. From there, we can set the details, so date and time. Let's go flying this afternoon. We'll do a 15-minute flight, and then we'll select one of our aircraft that's commercially registered and available to us. From there, we'll just take a quick note here to make sure we're being FAA Part 107 compliant, hit the next button, and from here, let's go fly down in San Francisco's Class Bravo airspace. It's just south of our location here in San Francisco. So zoom out, and it looks like we have the opportunity to fly up to 400 feet in this particular facility map grid. We would go and look at all of the NOTAMs, all of the TFRs here via the FAA.gov resources. And then we'll go ahead and draw our flight area. If you'd like to change the flight area or adjust the geometry, you can just press and hold on any of the corners and expand or contract your flight area. From there, we'll go ahead and hit the next button. Oh, we did forget one thing. We need to set the height that we would like to fly. So we'll go ahead and say we want to fly at 300 feet. You would drag the slider to the desired altitude that you'd like to fly at.
Excellent.
We'll go through the checklist here. I'm not a fan of pencil whipping checklists, but let's make sure that we can do this in our sleep because we know the rules so well. I'm a Part 107 pilot. I agree to follow all of the guidelines. We'll fly within line of sight with an aircraft that flies less than 100 miles an hour. The weather here in San Francisco is 70 degrees and sunny today, so I think the weather is going to work for us.
Beautiful.
It's going to be less than 55 pounds, and we will comply with any airspace restrictions and TFRs. I agree to these terms and conditions set forth by the FAA and the UAS service supplier. We'll go ahead and hit next. Great, so we've gone and talked to the Kittyhawk servers to make sure that our flight's eligible for auto approval. Well, let's go ahead and submit that to the FAA.
Perfect.
Awesome, so we just went ahead, talked to the FAA. They saw our flight. We've actually authorized our request. So if we, at any time before our flight, the FAA does not like us doing this operation, they can go ahead and rescind that. But for right now, we're good to go. So all of this information is available to us, and we can get it either on the web interface or on the mobile interface as well. So we can go back and see our flight plan area. We can go make sure that we're being compliant with all of the different requirements for a LANC authorization, and of course, check the authorization details.
Excellent. Now, Josh, I've never actually had a LANC authorization be rescinded, but when they rescind one, do you know, is that something that you would be notified of through Kittyhawk now that you have obtained your authorization through Kittyhawk, or would that just be via a direct contact from, let's say, a number via the FAA or an air traffic control station?
Well, lest we forget, LANC stands for Low Altitude Authorization and Notification Capability. So they do know my cell phone number. They could send a text. They could also just rescind it in the app here.
Sure.
That's why before I fly, I like to go check out my authorizations just to make sure everything is dialed in.
Excellent. So if they do need to rescind it, you would get that, it would appear that it has been rescinded via the app as well.
Yep.
Excellent.
So let's just go ahead and, all right, got our authorization. Let's go ahead and run a checklist on mobile here. We'll go ahead and run through our Collins morning checklist. Awesome. So coffee's set and brewed, keys are placed in pocket, car is on and heating. Seems like it's going to be a good morning. We'll go ahead and associate this to our mission. So we'll go down here to our Turkey Day mission. Oops. We'll go ahead and add in some notes. So in this case, we'll say the car was cold. We did do a very good job on that last checklist item. We'll hit log. And so it's going to take that checklist, and we're going to be able to know where we were, who did it, and what checklist they went to. So if we go back to the web interface here, we go to activity, we go to checklist logs, and we can see today at 7:19, we went through the Collins morning checklist. And we do this in UTC time because many of our enterprise customers have flights across time zones and countries even. So can I help you with any other questions, Colin?
Yeah, absolutely. So let's take a look at the other features here in the mobile app. So talk to us about, we know we can actually now operate the aircraft. We can interface and fly the aircraft via Kittyhawk as well. So why don't you talk about connecting to the DJI aircraft and what that's going to look like then?
Yeah, so our flight product is called Flight Deck. It's the Kittyhawk Flight Deck. And we actually let you configure everything before you're even connecting to the aircraft. This way, you can have a really good set of options available to you immediately. So you can set your telemetry to be shared with only your team, with the Kittyhawk UTM, or with the extended UTM with other airspace partners that we have in the space to make the entire community more aware and more transparent in terms of our operations. We even have local data mode. So you've heard that DJI has made it optional for you to share your telemetry. If you choose to share your telemetry, we're going to override local data mode, but most importantly, you know that nothing is going anywhere else except to the Kittyhawk cloud. We like to leave that enabled. And then from there, you can set up your real-time streaming, set up an automated flight profile. You can even log a checklist as a pre-flight or a risk assessment. You can link an authorization or link this flight to a mission so that all of that information is nice and tidy as soon as you land.
Excellent, excellent. And as far as the DJI status, that's something that obviously would connect to the aircraft whenever everything's turned on and everything's plugged in, correct? That's how that one would work over there?
Yeah, they don't let me fly in the office anymore.
Yeah, I figured, but that's all right. Yeah, just want to make sure we can see that. As far as the other elements that are down there at the bottom, Josh, can you scroll across and just give everyone an idea what's down there?
So if you happen to need to use the DJI Go platform for one of their autonomous flight modes, or perhaps an unlock code that you're utilizing, which is coming soon to Kittyhawk, by the way, you can do a sync, and every hour we'll go talk with DJI and import all those flight logs right into your account automatically. No need to do any extra work. And then we have a beautiful airspace interface here. So you're able to get weather reports, airspace, all available to you at the touch of a button. So if you want a satellite view, or for example, you'd like to look at different options for airspace, if you want to fly as a hobbyist, which these days is changing rapidly, but if you'd like to change the way your map looks, you have the ability to do so. You can also change the way your map looks. So you even have a special Kittyhawk map. Oops. I hit the wrong button here. Great, so we'll select that. And then most importantly, if you'd like to do some research with your airspace, you can do that via an address, coordinates, or even your favorite saved locations. So let's go ahead and check out, as a kid, I watched this guy on TV, Stick Stickly, and he was from New York City, New York State, 10108. He had a little song to this day, 30 years later, I remember that. But we can see here that where Stick Stickly lives is not a good place for us to fly. We have temporary VIP presidential TFRs. So probably not a good idea to go take Stick Stickly for a ride. But we can see this all available to us from the interface on mobile, updated in real time.
Excellent. Fantastic. Yeah, go ahead. I see you have weather information there as well and all kinds of other stuff. So keep showing us what you got. Yep.
So the weather information is available to us by hour as well as altitude. So if you wanted to go and see, hey, the winds aloft can be significantly different, we've done the work for you to go and get that information. You can get a really accurate weather forecast that's both based on NOAA data, the National Weather Service, and even crowdsourced using barometers in iPhones. This is a really accurate source of weather that's far more specific than, for example, a METAR.
Fantastic. One of the other things I see down there that I know I've had a few surprise encounters over the last few years in some of our flight areas is aircraft advisories. So, I know that won't necessarily be able to let us know every aircraft that may be approaching our area, but there are certain aircraft that it can alert us of, correct?
Yeah, so using the same live traffic that we did on the web interface, we can go in here and see folks that are flying inside of Kittyhawk's shared UTM. So we can go here, we can see the operations happening in real time.
All right, cool. So one other question that we get asked a lot, Josh, is a lot of the software that we use in the field is great. Be it the command and control stuff for the aircraft to help us better capture our data, or the flight management software solutions that are out there like Kittyhawk that can help us better streamline the whole process and make sure we're capturing everything that we need for an operation. But how does everything work if we get into those areas where we don't have the cell service? We don't have the internet connections. What options are we left with at that point in time?
Yeah, that's a great question. So Kittyhawk actually has an offline mode, and you're able to move into offline and online mode, and it actually syncs all of your data, like your checklists, your flights, your battery information, so that's available to you if you want to go work in a place that has denied connectivity.
Great. Well, we've talked about a lot about all the different features, Josh. Is there anything that either we haven't covered, or maybe just something that you think is the best, or one of the neatest, most revolutionary features of Kittyhawk that you want to make sure everyone is aware of at this point?
Certainly. So outside of all of the information that we capture in our flight logs, we also have telemetry, and this is where I turn into a little bit of a fanboy because I think this is so cool. If you're really into compliance and you understand that somebody could call up and complain about you and say, they were flying over my kids and looking in my house, and oh boy, my cat Mittens is never going to be the same. Boy, you know what? It'd be really nice to have the data to bring accountability to that situation. And so you can actually go see your telemetry as a flight sped up. So you can say, hey, we were flying here, we did this. And you can say, actually, no, on the 18th at 5:30, I was pointed south, not north. I was not even able to look at your house. And so you can actually do that second by second in real time on the Kittyhawk platform. And the level of accountability and transparency this brings into your operations is both great for the operator and the manager ultimately responsible in the organization.
Fantastic. That's excellent. All right. The other thing that we get asked a lot about from some of our larger clients that we've worked with is, as that manager, or that chief pilot, whoever the overall supervisor for the flight operations is going to be, and maybe there's many of them depending on the size of the organization. They one of the things that often comes up is, they're working in teams of pilots that may be organized locally. They may be in certain regions. Whatever the case might be, how is that manager or that supervisor able to view the different flight plans that have been set up by their individual pilots that are in the field, and one, issue those approvals? So saying, okay, the flight's been scheduled, it's been submitted, we need to go ahead and authorize this now after we've seen that the correct checklists have been completed or the correct risk assessments have been completed. And is there any way that individual can modify anything and send that information back to the pilot before they go ahead and then actually execute that flight?
Yeah, certainly. So Kittyhawk has teams and roles, so you're able to organize your folks in a team as well as their permissions. So if you want to get super granular about what they can do and what they can't do, all that's available to you. And then especially with the missions, a lot of our folks like the idea that this is a great way for them to communicate. So they're able to say, yeah, you know what? Let me add in some notes. Let me change the status to pending. Josh, I looked at your Turkey Day mission. I'm not sure I want you doing that. And you can say, all right, we're going to look into it. It's pending. Or, you know what? Sorry, Josh, this is not something that's going to work for us. Let's go ahead and deny that. Cool. No good. And these are things that you can notify your team based upon. So if we look at our missions screen here, we have the ability to say notification settings. I want an email every time my mission changes. I want an email every time this thing happens. This is a great way for teams to be able to work on their drone program cohesively.
Fantastic. That's excellent. And, I know that obviously you can't fly in the office where you're at today, Josh, but can you talk to us a little bit about any differences that may exist between the command and control interface using the flight deck versus actually being in and using one of the DJI Go interfaces at this point? Are there any features that are different or more enhanced, limitations, things like that?
Well, in addition to our live streaming capability, which is not available on Go,
right.
We've done several other niceties where you're able to look at maps and do other things while you're flying. But most importantly, we're actually in the middle of a huge redesign of Flight Deck. And we want to bring the same elegance and understanding that we've brought to our mobile application to the Flight Deck interface. And so stay tuned. Big changes are coming, and we're designing it strictly for the enterprise. We don't need a follow me mode down a ski slope if we're inspecting power lines. This is going to be built tough, it's going to be built simple, and it's going to be very useful, particularly for enterprise customers.
That's great.
One of the things that's so interesting is when we look at consumer electronics and consumer drones, it's holy cow, can it do this? Let's see if it can fly 3 miles away. Let's do all this crazy stuff. Can it orbit me while generating a 3D model all at once? Can we do all of this stuff? The enterprise is not looking for that. The enterprise is saying, how can I keep my team from doing silly stuff? How can I limit my team from engaging in activity that presents a high risk to the organization. And that's really where Kittyhawk shines.
That's great, and that's fantastic to know. Absolutely. We hear about some of the accidents that people experience during the early days with their programs, and obviously, the more accidents we have, then that takes away from the true benefits of the systems, and makes it harder for folks to realize those ROIs earlier. Which is obviously the goal: get that return on investment as soon as possible. So, those are all great things to know, great things to learn about, and we appreciate you taking the time with us today to go through everything, Josh. I know our students, our clients are going to be thrilled to take a look and hear everything that Kittyhawk has to offer. So thank you again for everything.
Thank you so much. I sincerely appreciate it. Please let me know if I can do anything to help.
Thanks,
Thank
Josh.
you. Bye.